Greetings! I'm Joshua, the Dungeon Master for the Dice of Dawn podcast, and the narrator of this adventure. Talking about a few things, the first being the format of the show and where to find it, its release schedule and the like. Then some homebrew rules that we use in place of regular ones in the normal 5e rulebook. And third will be the setting, the world building, the key differences that make it a little more unusual or separate from other settings usually associated with D&D like Faerun or Greyhawk. Well, let's get down to it. So the format of the show and where to find it. You can find it at Dice of Dawn on YouTube, as it's going to be a visual podcast for the foreseeable future. It'll include cam footage of us playing and laughing and talking around a table, drinking plenty of Mountain Dew. And when necessary, not till episode 7, mind you, but when necessary, we'll include cam footage of our battle mat and us moving tokens around and drawing weird shapes that might resemble a staircase or a building, who knows. We'll be releasing that first episode tomorrow, actually, Thursday, April 25th, and every Thursday afterwards we'll be releasing a new episode, anywhere from an hour and a half to 2 hours and 15 minutes long. We'll also be releasing this on iTunes in the next little while. Everything from the backgrounds to this video to other episode of the main podcast will be released on iTunes by the air date of episode 2, which should be May 2nd. And we are a new group, we are new at this, so please, I would love it, we'd all love it, if you want to yell at us or give us criticism, please, we'd love to hear it, but make it constructive, tell us how we can fix it. And if you do that, then we can grow and make better things, more interesting, more fun things to watch and listen to, and then everybody can have a good time and improve. And last thing on this front, we know comment sections, we know how they can get. Be nice to each other, please. We want this this community that we're trying to start, to be a fun, positive, and happy place where people can hang out and laugh and forget and be part of the fantasy. Anyways, moving on. The homebrew rules: critical successes and failures, natural 20s and 1s. Those apply to everything, not just attack rolls, at least the way we use them. It applies to everything: skill checks, saving throws, anything you roll a d20 on. Usually a 20 or a 1 will be to critical. A 1, and the way I do them, a 1 is very punishing. A 1 will really be one of the worst possible results, and a 20 really will be one of the best possible results. For attack rolls, actually, a critical success isn't just doubling the damage dice. You don't roll 2d8 instead of 1d8 when you critical hit on your longsword. No, you roll your normal 1d8 as if you hit. However, you add the maximum number of the damage die. So, say you're attacking with a greatsword, 2d6 damage, you critical hit. You automatically add 12 damage plus your normal 2d6 damage. So it's NPCs, enemies, players, everyone gets that. So it's critical successes are punishing and terrifying and quite fun at the same time. Also, when using advantage and disadvantage, a 1 and a 20 trump those. So if you have disadvantage and you roll a 20 and a 5, you got that 20. You rolled a 20, you lucked out. Things worked in your favor. Advantage and you rolled a 1 and a 19, too bad. I rolled poorly. As a DM, I really just roll poorly, and I want the players to know how it feels to roll poorly once in a while, since they tend to roll pretty damn well. So yeah, the 1s counteract advantage too. And further upon that, advantage or disadvantage, you roll a 1 or a 20, the 1 takes precedence. I really do roll absolutely horribly, and I want them to feel like I have a chance, and that luck isn't on their side necessarily all the time. Next rule, diagonals. We use a square grid, and while diagonals are less realistic, Diagonals counts 5 feet. As long as you can go diagonal, which you shouldn't have a problem usually, you can do it. It speeds up gameplay, makes things more fun and easy, and while it's less realistic, I think it's just better overall. Now, this next thing is actually a carryover from 4th edition that I really liked when I played that. Skill challenges, and it's a little modified as well, but how they work is you need a general number of successes from the group with skills before you get a certain number of failures. They're usually more successes than failures, so 6 successes before you get 4 failures. And how this works is each player rolls initiative, and player after player goes and rolls and chooses a skill, say Arcana or Athletics or Sleight of Hand, and figures out a way to apply that skill to their current situation, their current problem, and attempts to make it work. Rolls, and if they succeed, they succeed. If they fail, then the situation gets worse, and they have to try to get back from that. And it's kind of just a fun way to do things like chases and other kind of more role-play encounters. We do them not all the time, but you'll see them here and there. One of the players is playing an Unearthed Arcana subclass called the School of Invention for the Wizard. We modified it slightly. We thought it was fun, but it wasn't chaotic enough. So when he reaches level 2 and starts reckless casting, you'll notice he doesn't cast spells necessarily on the list in the Unearthed Arcana. That's because his reckless casting allows him to cast any spell of that level in the books. Xanathar's or Player's Handbook, anything. A cleric spell, a druid spell, whatever. Just get a little more fun that way, I think, and done a couple of the weird things with his class that just makes it kind of, I think, a little more interesting. So the last thing is for the material that is available to players to build their characters and the like, and get weapons and the such. And I do allow anything in the books. Anything in the books I am 100% okay with, and they're allowed to use. If it's in Unearthed Arcana and it's not in a book, then we will talk it over, but it's usually okay. School of Invention is a good example. For Wardrow's Feet Compendium, we look at each one, and if a player wants that one, we'll talk about it, and usually it should be fine, though. That one, the 5e Races Compendium, has a few things I like the Beast Skin and the Awakened Undead. They're very fun, and I think generally balanced enough. Matt Mercer, his things that are the ones that are really the main problem. Matt Mercer's other things like his corruption and other optional rules, and monsters and everything like that, those are great. I love that stuff. His classes, while I do love them, they just don't really fit in the setting. It's difficult because there are fun things as Gunslinger, those other classes, they're fun, but they just don't fit in the lore or the mechanics of this setting. So unfortunately, those are out. So the setting, the world building, the nations and the peoples that make up this D&D world, they're made up of the nations, the empire-sized nations that take up almost an entire continent in size. They range from being run by republics or democracies, ruled by a single council or by a monarch, but have no real race affiliation. But we do have other nations, such as Metland, the Dwarven nation, ruled by a Dwarven council and made mostly up of dwarves. But there are others in there, of course, like many dragonborn elves and other races do live there. We have the Dragonborn, Madir, and Wolden, the Elven nation, various nations of other races. A point, though, no humans. Humans don't exist in this world. This setting, humans just don't exist. There is good lore reasons for why they don't exist, but they ceased to be. For things that you might have to find out later. So no humans, they're not that interesting anyways. Just play a half-elf, in my opinion. Next important race specification, gnomes. Gnomes cannot use arcane magic. They can be a cleric, they can be a druid, a warlock even. But no bards, sorcerers, or wizards. you can still play a gnomish wizard or a gnomish bard, but you're not using magic. You're using technology. The gnomes all lost their magic at a certain point in history. It's not quite shrouded in mystery, but to keep up with the other races, the gnomes decided to learn and become a technologically masterful race. And once they realized that other races could copy their technology and eliminate any lead the gnomes had because of the technology, they built themselves a country where none could get in, and it's only gnomes. And they are incredibly insular and make sure that none of the technology escapes, and so that they become technological masters in their insular country. The last thing we really should talk about in this setting is the planar cosmology. We don't use the world tree or the wheel cosmology or any of that thing. We use what's called the bubble cosmology. This cosmology is odd. Think of it like a bathtub, like a bubble bath. Each plane of existence is a bubble, and bubbles can be completely covered by a larger bubble, or groups of bubbles, or half bubble, or various things. Each dimension, each plane is its own bubble, and, for example, the negative energy plane, that encompasses a great many of the other planes, and so that is a bubble that encompasses many of those bubbles and parts of those bubbles that are the smaller other planes. That is everything. Thank you for listening. If you got through this, thank you. And again, Thursday, April 25th, 2019 is our first episode of the Dice at Dawn D&D podcast. I hope you enjoy.